Welcome to Resilience Development in Action with Steve Bisson. This is the podcast dedicated to first responder mental health, helping police, fire, EMS, dispatchers, and paramedics create better growth environments for themselves and their teams. Let's get started.
You know, you've heard me talk about this before. GetFree.ai. Great for your note-taking, good for your transcript, good for your goals, good for everything that you do in a HIPAA-compliant nature. And if you use code STEVE50 at checkout, you will get $50 off your first month. And also, if you get a whole year, you will also get 10% off the whole year. But GetFree.ai has freed me to do more things with my life, including work on other passions. So get freed to do your notes, get freed from doing your goals, get free.ai with code STEVE50 to get $50 off your first month. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to episode 232. If you haven't listened to episode 231, it was with Lisa Truisis. And I hope you listened to both episodes because that was a great episode. She talks about dispatch, but her own personal story was amazing. And I hope you get to listen to that. But episode 232 is with someone I just met, and I feel like we're bonding already, and I truly enjoy everything we talked about. I think this is the longest pre-interview I've ever done, and I think if we could have done it another hour, we would have, and now that's a good thing, right? But I want to say hi to Doug Wyman. Yep. Welcome to Resilience Development in Action. I feel like I'm getting to be your friend already, and I appreciate that. But I don't think that the audience might necessarily know who you are. So if you want to tell them a little bit about who you are, that'd be great.
Great. So again, my name is Doug Wyman, and I served 32 years in the state of New Hampshire as a police officer. I retired in 2020 as the chief of police for the town of Sandwich, New Hampshire. Currently, I work as a staff investigator for the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health. I've been with DMH now for probably about coming up on 5 years. And additional to that, kind of my side hustles are, I teach a class in organizational wellness, resilience, and post-traumatic growth at the Command and Staff School at Roger Williams University for the New England Association of Chiefs of Police at the First Line Supervisor section. I'm also an instructor for Central Mass Crisis Intervention Teams, where I teach a class on supporting LGBTQ youth and their families. And I am also on the Executive Law Enforcement Advisory Board for Law Enforcement Against Drugs and Violence, which is a national drug prevention program. So I do that, and amongst other things, including pursuing my master's degree right now. So,
what's your master's going to be in?
It's going to be in criminal justice. As you saw, I have a bachelor's in divinity, and I'm an ordained minister. But I feel that my career, at this moment, that degree is going to help me more in my career than a divinity degree will. And maybe eventually I'll go for the MDiv, but
one day you should be a therapist. That's what I think, because
that's kind of the focus.
Because I think that what's fascinating is, you read someone's bio, and then you meet the person, and you see a person on paper, and they're pretty good, and that's not an attack. It's just what it is. And then we just spent all this time talking, and I'm like, this human is absolutely amazing. So I don't even know where to start, because the training, I'm going to link it in the show notes, because I think that has to be, people need to see this, because it's so important, because we talked about it off air, but I'm going to repeat what I said. We talked about critical incidents. Civilians, I hear, is about 7 or 8 critical civilians lifetime. And just during the job, on average, I think it's for first responders about 200. That's an average, by the way. That means some people are lower, but that means a lot of people are higher too.
Exactly.
And I know that not only adding to that is the fact that your personal tragedy that came about from that. So I really don't know where to go. Like I said, I'm interested in all of that, but maybe we should start about your personal story, because I think that that's what really makes people relate. You said you were a chief. Please keep on listening. I'm joking, of course. But I would love to hear more about your personal story of personal loss, and again, my heart goes out to you, but
Sure,
let's
thank
explain
you.
it to the audience.
It's multi-layered, as we talked about. It is multi-layered, but I think it's a testament to the faith that I have in the above, and the faith I had, or the support that I received from my family, but and my friends. But we're going back, like 2014, 2015. My wife and I had 2 children. I was promoted to chief in 2009. So this is right in the middle of my career as being a chief. I was a chief for 11 years in New Hampshire.
Right.
And I was a chief of a department which not only was the administrator, but I was also, my department was small enough that I still had to do, not only did I have to do budget and policy and all the chief stuff, but I also had to answer calls. I had to cover accidents. I had to investigate crimes. I had to prosecute cases in court, because New Hampshire has that, where officers are allowed to prosecute cases up to and including a Class A misdemeanor in court. So, all the motions and all the hearings, and that's all us.
And at 3 a.m., who do they call when there's something that happens?
Yeah, called us, because I was on call at least 4 days a week.
Right.
We had an area which was very rural that my department wasn't 24 hours, the sheriff's department wasn't 24 hours, and the state police were not 24 hours. So there was, dispatch was 24 hours, but the guys on the road weren't. So, that 3 a.m. for the alarm, or the early morning domestic, or a couple times the person that's at home that probably shouldn't be at home, that has dementia or Alzheimer's, decides to get up and take a walk, you're getting that call.
And that DV after drinking from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. is 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. I should say that's the one that gets the call, right? It's not like you're getting a, hey, is everything okay? Are you feeling good, Doug? No, because they're not asking that. They
don't care.
Yeah,
they don't
exactly.
Care. They don't care.
So please continue your story about
yeah. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So we had two children. My oldest at that point, 2014, 2015, is very heavily into drugs, and this is the time frame in which it's the height of the opioid epidemic in the United States. My county has to be, in New Hampshire, it was Manchester was number 1, Nashua was number 2, and my county, Carroll County, per capita was number 3. My little hamlet of 1,100 people at one point, I think it was 2015, we had 9 overdoses, 8 of them non-fatal, but we did have 1 that was fatal. So I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with a son that's in the throes of addiction very heavily. He ends up racking up arrests left, right, and center, and ends up for a very long period of time being homeless on the streets. And as a parent, you kind of lower those expectations that every day that he's alive is a bonus, but you're expecting a call at some point that he either died of an overdose, he died of the elements because wintertime in New Hampshire is pretty cold, or he's been murdered in one of these homeless encampments because somebody wanted something he had.
Right.
Fortunately enough, none of that ever happened. He ended up being arrested in a very significant arrest when he was 21, and how he avoided prison, I have no idea. But again, that's his grandfather, his grandparents who he was living with at the time. His grandfather's a retired police officer. His dad's a police officer, so there's that stress of the family shame, but also people looking at our family and stuff like that, and people that whole stigma part of it. While that's going on, I also had my youngest came out as gay, and then hit the gas pedal with rapid onset of gender dysphoria, going from genderqueer to gender fluid to eventually transgender, and having to deal with that in my family, which The gay part was fine. This is back before the transgender thing even was. There was no guidebook. Nobody knew anything about it. So I mean,
I would argue there's still not a good guidebook, but anyway.
yeah, exactly. But I would also say that so probably what we did at first, we probably made a lot of mistakes. Matter of fact, I know we made a lot of mistakes. But those mistakes were out of love, and trying to help our child through a very difficult period in their life. And then in 2017, my wife at the time, who had always suffered from anxiety and depression, in April of that year, it was an incident at her work that she wasn't even involved in, but ended up spiraling her out of control. And like I told you earlier, probably in hindsight, is probably an undiagnosed bipolar. But she was having audio and visual hallucinations. She was experiencing extreme paranoia from the incident. And then the morning after, the oldest son, who was now in recovery and doing fairly well, is about to have a child, and the baby shower is the night before, and the morning after is when my wife takes my duty weapon and takes her own life. That whole incident in itself, it was as I told you, was investigated as an officer-involved shooting.
Yeah.
The county attorney at the time didn't allow the local police department to investigate the incident, as I was an alumnus of that department. It was given to the state police major crime unit. When I was taken to the hospital, I was put under sequestration, put under guard. Detectives came in and stripped me of my clothing, left me in a room that didn't have a Johnny or a blanket for about a half hour before I was able to get that. And I understand the reasons for it. I was home at the time. I was in the bathroom. I was getting ready for work when it happened. But it happened. So, but hindsight, I think they probably could have done a little bit better there.
I've heard many stories around that, and most people are not stripped naked.
Yeah.
And I get why they want to investigate. I understand they want to talk to you. I understand all of that. And if they want to give it to the state police or the county or whatever, it makes perfect sense to me again.
Yeah.
What happened to you is a little over the top, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't let my parents in. They wouldn't let anybody in for the longest period of time. But a couple good things started to happen right away. I mean, one of the best decisions I ever made that helped me in my own healing later on was that I made the decision not to go home, that the house was going to be sold. I stayed with my parents for about a month or so. They lived an hour south of me, so that month I was, separated from a lot of things. But within the first 24 hours, the state police got me one of their peer support people to talk to. The New Hampshire chiefs got me our guy to talk to. And I had two friends that were pastors.
Yeah.
One was my own, and one was a friend of mine that was a pastor. And for about the next month, until I was able to find my own counselor, somebody would call me in the morning, somebody called me at lunchtime, somebody called me at dinner, somebody would call me at night before I went to bed. So it was like having 4 therapy sessions a day and this lasted for about a month. Like I said, it lasted for about a month. And then finally I found my own counselor, which was in my church, who happened to be a licensed clinical social worker, and she was a retired Coast Guard officer, and she had also had a police officer husband that had died in front of her. They were hiking, and he had a heart attack and died in front of her. So
cultural competency is so essential.
Yeah, so she really understood, and we came at it from a Christian perspective, not a secular perspective, which to each his own, but it worked. It worked for me.
But I'm going to stop you for a second, because I'm going to tell you one thing. Those are all important facts, and what I mean by that is this: I'm a Buddhist myself. which, if people like that approach, that's great. If they don't like it, I don't impose it on anyone. I just bring it up. But for some people, that's why they choose me. When I work with first responders, because of my experience, they choose me because of that. Because I was on the CISM team, because I worked on a crisis team. Some people choose me because I have crisis experience. Don't pretend to have a cultural competency that you don't have, because the person across from you is depending on it. So when you talk about that, to each his own, I think that's how you choose a culturally competent person. And I know in my show I talk a lot about first responders, but Christian, Jewish, trauma-informed, transgender. Someone sends me someone who's transgender. Not that I don't want to work with them. I'm more than happy. I have limited experience. I'm not the guy. And that's not an attack. We need to be able to say no. But I think that's where first responders get shy about asking those questions.
Oh, exactly. And it's like anything else. I mean, you wouldn't go, if you're a cardiac patient, you wouldn't go to a proctologist.
Yeah, my podiatrist really helped me with my heart.
Yeah.
What?
So, I mean, yeah. So it's critical for that. And I think for me, it was able to bring me that, that in some instances it can be lacking, that forgiveness, salvation, redemption component, and which I found to be very healing for myself. And 2.5 years into therapy, she pretty much said, I'm just life coaching you here, so you're graduated. So, but it was a period of time that I was able to lean into my faith a lot. It became, very, very foundational to me. And it leads who I am now, and I'm very proud of that. It gave me the inspiration to, go back to school, but, not only I could have taken 6 classes and completed my bachelor's degree, but I decided to, change up my major completely. So my 6 classes became 18 classes, and I got a bachelor's in divinity rather than a bachelor's in history.
Right. But, but that's the healing process from either suicide, from homicide, from a difficult, any type of healing. I think that what people misunderstand, I know this is something that people need to hear. I treat what I call the mind, body, spirit. Yep. And what I mean by that is, if you say, no, I want a Christian person, I'll find you a Christian person. No problem, no questions asked, that's fine with me. But if you're going to heal your mind and you're going to try to heal your body, but you're not going to heal your spirit,
it doesn't work. You've got to have that triangle. That triangle has to be, you have to build, and truly I believe this, is that you truly have to build upon a strong spiritual foundation, because that spiritual foundation allows you to get the capacity to be able to deal with things and be able to put it somewhere. And it doesn't, in the class we talk about, I said, it could be Stoicism. It could be anything, but you have to have a purpose higher than yourself.
I argue even worse. I'll argue with you that if someone's an atheist, that means you think that it's all over, there's nothing else. Then you got to do the best you can while you're here. And that's still a spiritual practice.
Yeah, it is.
So to me, when people deny, I'm not spiritual, I'm like, we're all spiritual. We just practice it differently.
Even an atheist is spiritual.
That's what I mean.
Because they believe in what they believe. So there's still some type of belief system that's in place there.
I love going to my Unitarian Universalist, for those who don't know, church for the longest time, because we talked about all faiths, and it was so eye-opening. And I think that for me, when I talk about spirituality and people who struggle with it, I said, when you practice your spiritual belief system, does it hurt people? And most people say, of course not. And I said, then it's a good spiritual practice.
Exactly. And I'll put up, in our class, I'll put up a couple words on the board, and people look at me like, how is that related? So I put faith, hope, disability, go, and impossible. And they're like, how does that work? I said, well, using God as a generic term, okay, this is what spirituality means. It means, so faith, you have full assurance of the heart that you can hold on because pain ends, okay? Right. And that the disability you think you have, if you put go in front of it, now it becomes, in a generic term, God's ability to be able to get through the impossible putting a apostrophe between I and am because I'm possible.
Right, correct.
So that's all it is, folks. It's all it is.
But that's what I'm happy we're talking about this because
Yeah.
people who listen to this sometimes really respond to that. But the other part that I want to bring up too is something you mentioned that I think is so important. I had this conversation with multiple people. Like for the first 2 weeks, whenever there's a loss, suicide, homicide, people are there. They're going to bring you a pot roast. They're going to go to the funeral. They're going to go to a service.
I tell my wife, you got 30 days. You got 30 days.
Yeah.
I says, and you're gonna be overwhelmed with it. You got 30 days. You're gonna be overwhelmed with support, stuff like that. For me, it was a little bit different because I didn't necessarily have that because I removed myself from my community.
Right.
So I didn't necessarily have that. But you have 30 days where people they're inundating you. You know, what can I do for you? What can I do? You know, they're bringing you food. They're bringing you this. They're bringing you that. I remember when I moved back home after 30 days, okay? And it was on the very generous kindness of somebody that was a friend of mine. Their friends offered me their vacation home free of rent for an entire year. And they're like, just heal. You go do you. But I remember walking into that house that night that's fully furnished. Nothing in it is familiar. And going, okay, now what?
Right. Exactly.
Now what?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and losing a spouse like that.
Yeah.
You're like, who am I? Like, who do I?
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm looking at my dogs, and I'm looking looking around the house, going, okay, guys, this is it. Okay, and you know, we're gonna be here for a little bit. I don't know what this is gonna look like, but
yeah. Who knows, right? And when you're sitting there with all the support, and then you're in an unfamiliar area, now you're suddenly now in a situation where you got to live with that thought process. Because I think that one of the other thing too is one of the things I try to break down on this podcast: grief never ends.
no, it doesn't. But you can manage it.
No, I agree with you, but that's what it is. But if you're like, after 30 days, you should be good. That's what I mean about grief never ends. It's not like it's like in 30 days.
Yeah, and you're gonna have people that are very well intentioned, and a lot of people is because they don't know what to say that they'll say stupid shit like that.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, it'll be better in a year. It's like, how the hell do you know?
She's in a better place. That to me is the most generic BS that you can say.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how do you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And better than being with me?
And to some people that'll piss them off. I mean, I took it for what it was. I understood that.
I understand the spirit of what they say, but it's still annoying.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, and I get you're trying to be nice, but sometimes you just don't have to say anything. Just, it's good to see you. And leave it at that. You know, it doesn't. You know, everything doesn't have to be a conversation.
I tell people all the time, like, for me, sometimes when they announce that in therapy or even my friends, I'm like, I don't even know what to say. What do you need from me? And if you don't know what you need from me, I'll keep on being there for you. Because I don't want to offer other advice.
If all you need is for me to sit by you right now while you, like, process something, I'll just sit here and be quiet.
I'll go sit in a raft and we'll go fishing.
Exactly.
I don't fish much, but I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you need,
Right.
you need, and however you need me to show up, I'm there, and that's what needs to get across. And the same holds true for departments.
Correct. That's what. Yeah.
And the same, you know. So, like I said, you know, I had this happen to me, and I was able to make some decisions early on, and I'm able to do all this stuff. But I think it's for the audience too. I think it's incumbent for them to know too that, you know, forward progression comes out of acceptance, and that acceptance doesn't mean agreement.
Correct.
Okay? And love doesn't mean approval. Okay, so understanding that.
Right.
Okay, so you've accepted something. Okay, well you only have, after acceptance, you only have two choices. Okay, you can do something destructive or you can do something constructive.
Constructive.
Okay,
yeah.
and like I tell my people, it's like, you know, you can be better or you can be bitter. Okay, it's your choice, but either way, okay, one, it's going to be just as hard to be better as it is to be bitter, but one of them you're going to be far better off at the end than you are the other. So
right. Both kind of work, but not in a good way for one of them, and the other one brings you some of that forward movement.
And one of the things with grief too that happens is that people, and it can happen, grief or even through, it can happen with acute stress, it can happen with trauma, it can happen, a lot of times you find it in post-traumatic stress, is that you have stuck brain. Okay, and a lot of times, all it is a fundamental attribution error. Okay, that's all it is. It's like so you're on a SWAT unit, you're in the stack, okay, and the door gets breached and everybody goes in and the first guy through the door catches a round, okay, and number two guy is stuck because he's like, well, if I had been front, well, you would have been the one that got shot.
Yeah,
it doesn't. The objective part of it doesn't matter who was number one. Okay, the fact is that it happened. You need to accept it.
Right.
Okay, and the problem is that you're stuck. You're stuck with if. You're stuck at if.
Right.
Okay, and we have to help our people try and get beyond if.
Well, in my office, there's a sign that talks about the 7 dirty words in my office. And if you're not familiar with George Carlin, it's from George Carlin.
Yep.
But mine is if, but, try, could, should, would, probably.
Oh, and yeah.
Because they're all conditionals.
And playing the Monday morning quarterback with yourself, playing the woulda, coulda, shoulda, I mean, that's a rabbit hole. You're just going to...
You want to destroy yourself? Then go ahead.
You're just gonna keep on digging. So
the last thing before, as we got to wrap up this first part here, one of the things we talked about off air is also the support that we get. You don't need it from someone with bars. And yes, that's helpful. Don't get me wrong. Administration should support. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But we can also offer help as an officer, as a...
Absolutely. Every agency has your official leaders, i.e. the people that have the stripes, bars, and stars. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've also got the unofficial leaders. Okay. So if somebody in your department is sick or they have like a broken leg but they need something repaired on the house, you know the person to go to say, hey, Jimmy's going to organize this, and if he says, hey, we all need to show up at Doug's house on Saturday, okay, 15 people are going to show up and get it done. Those are your informal leaders.
Right.
Okay, and a lot of times, and I know we'll get into it in a little while, but what happens in departments when they start to build wellness programs, they forget about that. A wellness program is your recruitment and retention solution for the most part, because like I told you earlier, it's like if you're proud of your house and your house is in order, you want other people to come in and see it, and you want them to be part of that.
Right.
So if you have a really good wellness program and you've done your job, you've done your diligence as a leader in your department, a former leader in your department, whether it be chief, captain, whatever you are, okay, in recruiting those people that are going to promote that program for you, it's going to be all-encompassing and it's going to be holistic, because you're going to be people, allow people to do what they're good at, which is bringing other people in. And it's gonna work. Like we talked about, you're gonna have that diffusion of innovation, where you're gonna have the people that come up with the idea, then the people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me, and then you're gonna have the ones that are gonna follow along later. By the time you're done with this arc, okay, the ones that are like the never coming alongs are gonna be in the minority.
Well, I'm going to stop you on that because I got to complete this episode. I want to thank you, but for those of you who will know, part 2 is on Friday. So please join us then. And again, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States and Canada.